Hello everyone, welcome back to the Captain Logan Show. It is I, Captain Logan, and joining me as always is my fantabulous dancing chat moderator and producer DJ Martinez. And DJ, are you ready to rehash everything we've said about the MCU for the last year? Aren't you excited?
Heck yeah! Don't I look excited?
Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm going to do my level best not to overtly repeat myself too much tonight. We're going to be treading some ground, of course, that we've had to talk about quite a bit over the last, especially 6 months, but a year, maybe even a little bit longer, with the turmoil behind the scenes with MCU productions and the kind of lackluster reception to a lot of their recent offerings, and just how, let down a lot of the fan base and regular moviegoers seem to be with Marvel now, and kind of the big question of what they might need to do to bounce back if they could really get that big second wind and come back and reclaim very much of their former glory. And I don't want to be a big downer about it, because it sounds like they might finally be taking some steps in the right direction. And so it seemed like the right time to come back and revisit this again. Every so often this comes up when we've got news about how Marvel's handling stuff. There was a big Variety article that came out this week that I wanted to skim through and read some of and respond to parts of, because there's some new developments. Some of it we have to take with a grain of salt, apparently, because we've already had a couple of insiders, people that work at Marvel, come out and try to debunk pieces of it. But so far, from what I've heard, my big takeaways from this article, if very much of it is to be believed, still kind of hold and are valid, and I think it's still worth responding to. So when I wanted to get that out front, because a couple people before the show started, when I first set it up earlier this evening, were like, "Oh, you're not going to talk about that Variety article, are you? That's already been debunked." And I'm like, "Well, it talks about 15 different things. Was it wrong about everything? Did Marvel not go on their annual retreat and discuss all the difficulties they've been having lately, and are trying to figure out, kind of damage control and I don't know, that's kind of a bad word these days, but more just strategies moving forward. No, that seems to be what they've been doing, and so we're going to talk about what some of those strategies might be, and it kind of less about what the actual big news is, and more what do we think the right path forward is, beyond just a straight-up reboot of the whole kit and caboodle, which I think DJ and I both, in a perfect world, would kind of love to see, but that's probably not what's ever going to happen, or at least not anytime soon. But anyway, everybody, thanks a lot for being here. Really appreciate you, and thanks for watching after the fact if you're doing that as well. We'll get into the lead-in topic here in just a moment and read that article down. But first, I just want to say thanks for being here, and as always, if you would like to ask us anything under the sun through the show, geeky or otherwise, but we mostly appreciate the geeky questions. We've been getting pretty silly on the show lately with all kinds of other random things, and people seem to be enjoying that, so bring it on. But geeky questions more than anything, pop culture stuff, superhero, sci-fi, what have you, comic things. Feel free to leave a super chat in any dollar amount that guarantees that we'll talk about whatever you'd like to hear us discuss on the show tonight, be it about the Variety article we're going to chat about and MCU woes, or anything else. And obviously, when we get past the lead-in topic, we will take questions about that and lots of other things. And that really helps keep things trucking here on Geekvolution, so we really appreciate the support. And you can also support us, quick plug for Patreon at patreon.com/Geekvolution. Apologies for not having an After Dark the last couple of weeks. I was under the weather last week, and that put me behind on things, and I had to move a lot of my schedule around. So once again, I'm not going to be able to do an After Dark tonight. I will try to sneak one in next week if at all humanly possible. I promise at least one a month. I'll definitely get to one this month, but I try to shoot for two when I can, and I was not able to make that happen last month. So Brandon messaged me this morning, was kind of bummed that when he found out we were going to have After Dark today, but I was like, I've got this big writers meeting tomorrow night. I'm going to be up quite a bit of tonight trying to get prepared for that, and so Like I'm busy with even things that you guys never see that doesn't actually air on the channel. But if you don't want to or can't leave a super chat, you can leave us a question in the regular comments, and make sure to tag at DJ Martinez or at Films by Color or at why haven't I gotten to say anything for the last 5 minutes? He'll answer to any of those things and more. DJ, how have you been this week, man?
Oh, it's been a good week. It's been a good week. Halloween. We celebrated Halloween, yeah.
It kind of feels like we just did this because we had our Halloween show last Thursday, but Halloween was on Tuesday.
Yeah, weird day for Halloween, but...
Yeah. I have to keep reminding myself that we didn't do that on Halloween. Like, I feel like I just saw you.
Well, I'm glad I've left an indelible impression on you that transcends time.
That's going to be the name of your autobiography. An indelible impression that transcends time. That's good.
Pretty good.
It's a little long for an album, but it might be just long and pretentious enough for a memoir.
That's the goal.
I'm thinking. That will be the name of my autobiography. Long and pretentious enough for a memoir.
Man, that would be, yeah. Well, have you ever thought about actually writing a memoir? A YouTube memoir?
Yeah, I mean, I've kicked it around. I don't think my life is anything like interesting enough to do that.
You turned into Wheezy from Toy Story 2. What sound you just made?
Oh, I thought you meant like if I made an autobiography, I would immediately make that sound.
No, yeah, you just completely lose your voice, like you've been sitting on the shelf of Andy's room.
Now I want the Wheezy autobiography.
Yeah, Wheezy's cool.
He's led an interesting life. He's dead now. I do believe.
Probably. I don't think they kept him. He's just a squeaky toy. I mean, isn't he a dog toy? It was always weird that he was like in Andy's room. A dog toy? What? He's just a squeaky penguin.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and even if not, why is he keeping baby toys around?
I don't know. I think he just got lost. I think the idea was he just got lost behind something on a shelf somewhere, and they forgot to throw him out. So
I gotta be honest with you, I've never thought to analyze this.
Hey, that's what we do here. We analyze everything.
That's true, everything. And we overthink all of it, and we make sure that it's long and pretentious. Those are the words for the evening. DJ, you said you did some kind of really wild costume that you could only wear once. What was that again?
Oh, yes. I posted some photos in a short on my channel if you want to see it. I went as Paul Hackett from After Hours, which is a Scorsese movie from 1985. And at some point, he wears just a suit with his tie, a shirt and tie, but at some point in the movie, he does get plastered into a papier-mâché sculpture. And then when he finally gets out of it, he's just like in his suit, but he's completely covered in white papier-mâché. So I had to do that.
Wow, that sounds ambitious. I can't wait to see pictures. I've not looked at your Facebook or anything.
Yeah, sure. I go ahead. I posted it. Well, I posted it on my personal Facebook, but I also posted it here, like right on the channel in the community tab, so you can just see them there.
Oh,
but,
neat. Okay.
People were really nice, especially on TikTok. Like the film talk area, section of TikTok was like freaking out about it because it's I like doing. I actually don't usually do deep cut references like that. Connor usually does those for his costume, so I've been inspired by him because he's been doing that the last couple of years. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, he did a really cool one this year too.
Yeah, he did the David Lynch one.
Yeah, it's always stuff that I don't immediately recognize, but he's nice enough to put the photo reference with it, where I'm like, I mean, whatever that is, you got real damn close. Like,
that's what I did too. I just put the photo reference, and I put a quote from the movie, and I didn't say anything else. So if you get it, you get it. If you don't, then
see, I'm such a mainstream guy that anything I would think to do, most everybody is gonna know, at least like, you know, big comic geeks or whatever. And then the more obscure things I think of are stuff I can't begin to pull off.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, you know, not the right build or, you know.
Yeah, this was an easy one.
Ethnicity or sex or something. You know what I mean? Like, just all the cool stuff I think of, I'm like, well, I can't do that. I'd have to pass that on to somebody else.
Yeah, well, you can gender bend it, whatever you need to. This was just, I'm broke this year, and this was cheap. I went to Goodwill and found a suit jacket for $7 and a tie for like $12, and there's my costume. We already have flour.
Well, so. I'm glad that you, you know, not to sound like pitying guy with the violin, but I'm glad that you got to do something new, because I thought you were just gonna have to fish out an old costume like you did for this show.
No, yeah, we weren't even really gonna dress up, but I really liked that movie so much this year, and like a few months back, I was like, oh, that'd be a fun costume to do, because that's an iconic scene from that movie. So it was in the back of my mind. Then I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try it. It's not too expensive.
That's really neat. Yeah, you guys always get really creative with your costumes.
Well, we usually like do something with the kids this year, but they wanted to do two different things, so we didn't have a group costume. Like you guys had a really cool group shot, but my daughter wanted to be Dorothy from Wizard of Oz, and my son wanted to be a Ninja Turtle. So it's like, well, can't really do a group a group costume.
Well, what helps in my situation is that I have many children. So we still had three different themes, but it looked more planned out because we paired us all off. So for anybody that didn't see our picture, it's on the community tab if you want to go take a look at that. Thanks to everybody that saw that. That had a lot of engagement. I guess people thought that was cool. But my girls were, I've got twin daughters that are 2, and they were Ninja Turtles. Speaking of Ninja Turtles, we saw so many Ninja Turtles this year. DJ,
that movie, yeah.
I thought we were being all cool because we let our little girls be Ninja Turtles, and then we went to a trunk or treat thing. There were no fewer than 15 children dressed as Ninja Turtles, and I swear to God, half of them were girls.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, we're not special.
There was a lot. Yeah, my son was a Ninja Turtle, and other Ninja Turtles kept coming up to him and be like, hey, and they would talk for a second.
Yeah, and then after, 65 of them crowd around, you're like, there's only supposed to be like 4, right? Like 5 if you really stretch it. Why are there so many Ninja Turtles? I guess you could be a bunch of different versions of Ninja Turtles. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? Actually, if you had 4 kids, but
like 4 different Donatellos.
I'm gonna have 6. But if you had where they're each the same turtle, but all from different lines. So you have like a movie one, an '87 one, like black and white Eastman and Laird one, and then like a '03 or a 2012 or something. Like that'd be really cool.
Yeah, one poor kid gets the crappy Bay Turtles costume.
Oh, that's sad. The coolest one would be the black and white suit.
Yeah, of course.
The
biggest, the people that get hit the hardest with the overly detailed movie versions of geeky costumes are the Halloween costumes, because they don't translate at all. They look terrible. Like super over detailed Ninja Turtle translated into Halloween costume just looks like a bunch of wrinkled mess.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be simple. Like comics translate to good.
Well, the little kid ones that we had this year looked really good because they were based on '87, and so they didn't have a lot of lines and stuff. I don't know which one your son had, but the girls had these like really, really simple ones, and then instead of masks, they just have like a hat that has the bandana on it.
Yeah, we just got the one from Target for Judah, but it had like an actual mask that tied around, but it didn't have like a turtle face.
Yeah. Well, these were toddler ones, and they're better for 2-year-olds because they're not going to keep the masks on, but they might wear the hats. So.
But it did have a belt that had the L on it.
Yeah, ours did too.
And it lit up, which was kind of cool.
Oh,
doesn't really make sense.
That's neat. Yeah,
it's cool.
Well, and then you can find him.
Yeah.
If he gets lost, that's a good idea out in the dark. Anyway, let's go ahead and get to the lead-in topic now, shall we? Folks are not here for us to talk about Halloween.
Somebody asked how our Halloween was, so we're answering that question. That was
okay.
Brightburn 1985.
You're welcome. Anyway, so here is that aforementioned Variety article. I'm not going to do any more preamble about this. I will just read some of this down and interject here and there. So again, take some of this with a grain of salt. There is the potential that at least a couple of things in this article are not entirely accurate. This is one of those an insider has told us, kinds of situations. And I will point out the couple of things I know where somebody has said this is not entirely accurate. Anyway, so Crisis at Marvel, again, this is from Variety. This is by a writer named Tatiana Siegel. Crisis at Marvel, Jonathan Majors' backup plans, the Marvel's reshoots, reviving original Avengers, and more issues revealed. DJ, is this the first you've heard? I mean, I guess if this is supposed to be a big revelation, it would be. I'm surprised this isn't a rumor that I've heard kicked around more. Is this the first you've heard about the idea of bringing back Downey and some of the old crew for another like follow-up Avengers movie, like resurrecting characters?
Yeah. I haven't heard much about it, but they can pretty much do whatever they want because they've got time travel, they've got multiverse. I mean, they've set the board to just anything. So I kind of
Yeah.
wish it wasn't that open-ended.
Yeah, me too. Well, and beyond Tony Stark, they've already found loopholes to resurrect most everybody, right? Like we brought Gamora back right away. We brought we brought Loki back right away. Gave him his own TV show. Oh no, it's doing that weird. Okay, this time when Skype's doing that weird thumbs up thing, and then this time when it did it, I got a message on Skype that was like advertising something. I have no idea what that even what. Oh, and now it's doing a thumbs down. Why is it doing that?
I have superpowers.
Okay. Well, this is going to be a really good time to cut away from you and look at this article. Anyway, let's go ahead and read this down. I mean, I said I hadn't really heard that rumor. I've heard people suggest that, Downey will likely come back somewhere at some point, like in Secret Wars. But I hadn't heard of this idea of doing another movie, which, like another Avengers movie that would be like a reunion thing, which strikes me as kind of desperate. But anyway, let's go ahead and read this down.
Way too soon.
Yeah, way too soon. This past September, a group of Marvel creatives, including studio chief Kevin Feige, assembled in Palm Springs for the studio's annual retreat. Most years, the vibe would have been confident, even cocky, given how the premier superhero brand has remade the entertainment business in its image. I'm going to skim around with this. This is a pretty lengthy article, so I'm not going to read everything, but I will read the kind of introductory paragraphs here. But this occasion was angst-ridden. Everyone at Marvel was reeling from a series of disappointments on screen, a legal scandal involving one of its biggest stars, and questions about the viability of the studio's ambitious strategy to extend the brand beyond movies into streaming. The most pressing issue to be discussed was what to do about Jonathan Majors, the actor who had been poised to carry the next phase of the MCU, but instead is headed to a high-profile trial in New York on domestic violence charges. And as usual, I don't want to get real deep into the weeds with the legal woes with Jonathan Majors, except to say, if you have not heard about this yet, I think it was announced that he was officially going to trial like middle of last week, like just a few days ago. I don't know if you'd heard about this yet, DJ. But Marvel's been kind of waiting around to make any official decision about him, it seems like, until they knew like just how far all of that was going to go and how much it was going to affect his reputation. Obviously, it's already hurt his reputation quite a bit, but like if he actually goes to trial and then gets convicted, they're really in trouble with that, like how to move forward with Kang, and do you recast, do you find a way to get around Kang and build to some other big villain, like that's supposed to be the next Avengers movie. So and I've been predicting for a while, DJ, that they might just pivot away from Kang anyway. Like I was already saying that might have to happen even before the whole Jonathan Majors scandal, just because Quantumania wasn't popular and didn't do the guns and didn't get the critical success they were hoping it would. And so how much sense does it make to move forward with those plans? Like nobody seems super excited about that character. And now they've got Loki Season 2, which I've not started watching yet, where they weren't able to do big reshoots because of the actor strike and the writer strike. And they're stuck with all the major stuff they shot already, and the rumor is, and this is in this article, that or it's probably more than a rumor, that the big finale for that show is even more building hugely to Kang Dynasty. And what are they gonna do with all of that? Like at this point, it looks like they're likely not gonna bring Majors back, whatever ends up happening with this trial, unless he wins it real hard and everybody turns against his ex-girlfriend and whatever. I don't really see that happening, and again, I don't want to get real into that whole thing, but he's claiming he's the victim in all of that, and however that whole trial goes down, I just think that it's still going to really hurt his reputation overall. I don't think this is going to be a Johnny Depp situation at all.
Yeah, what do you do? I mean, you just pivot? Do you just like handle Kang in like one movie and then oh no, it was a red herring, and the real threat is Galactus. And then you just completely change what the face is about.
Right, Galactus was behind Kang all along.
Yeah.
Hilarious. I hadn't had that thought. That may be the way to handle it, but then that's kind of sad for the first Avengers movie you will have had in 6 or 7 years by that point.
You just have Kang like ranting and screaming, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere Galactus just steps on him. It's like, oh, I guess this guy's the new threat.
DJ, if they did that, if they went ahead and kept to their guns with Kang Dynasty, but then didn't continue with Kang past that, didn't make him the big bad for the whole phase or whatever, I think you could see the Avengers movie that doesn't get anywhere near $1 billion. I really do. Because you also don't have... The more important thing is you don't have the Avengers characters to support it. You know, you don't have the superheroes that people are clamoring for that can't wait to see all on screen together.
Yeah, it's a both. It's a 1-2 punch of a villain people don't care about and heroes people don't care about. If they had one or the other.
Yeah, because nobody went to, or very few, I would say, I should say, went to Age of Ultron because of Ultron, but that was the sequel to a hugely, hugely popular, game-changing movie, bringing together a bunch of characters that people never thought they'd get to see on screen together. We don't have that novelty anymore. And we don't have hardly any superheroes left that people are just really super stoked for. And, you know, save like maybe Spider-Man, and he's not going to be in that movie. More than likely.
Yeah, the Kang movie is going to be interesting because they're going to have to completely abandon formula, because usually they have like one big bad villain who just kind of sits there, and then there's like a million pawns. Like in the first movie they had the Chitauri, and then they had 1,000 Ultron bots in the second one, and then in the Infinity War and Endgame they had those Spider-Man alien doppelganger looking alien things. So like what was going to be his army? Was it just going to be like 1,000 Kangs running around? Can he make like that many of himself?
And the biggest irony, it was going to be Matrix 2 all over again, and the CG probably would have looked just as good. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because the big irony about all of this to me is they put all their eggs not only in the basket for a singular character and a singular actor, but an actor that was going to be, and that we already saw at the end of Quantumania, on screen a bazillion times as a bunch of different characters. So, like, the one guy they're gonna lose now was supposed to play all the bad guys, everybody. Like, you know, like a ton of bad guys, a ton of Kangs.
Yeah, and that's not their fault. That just sucks.
They've had a string of bad luck, and I wanted to mention that some of this is their fault, not with the Kang thing, but some of the woes that we're going to talk about, like oversaturation. This article mentions that they responded to COVID by saying, people are at home. Let's make sure that there's never a day without a new Marvel thing, and that has not really worked out that well for them. So like that was a mistake. They had quality control problems. Obviously, they weren't able to repeat the success that they had with Guardians, very much anyway, with bringing in smaller second string characters to prop back up to A-list to replace their Iron Mans and their Captain Americas, and now even their Black Panthers. So obviously they have big, too expensive budgets, convoluted budgets, and samey stories and all of that, the stuff that we talk about all the time. But some of this was just a run of real bad luck. I mean, like, should they have put everything at the feet of Jonathan Majors as he was, suddenly getting really popular? I don't know enough about the behind the scenes with him to know if there should have been any red flags for them. There didn't seem to be with other studios he worked for either. I mean, he was turning into kind of Hollywood's new golden boy. So I don't know. I don't really want to blame them for that. And then obviously Chadwick Boseman's death, not their fault. Et cetera, et cetera. So I mean, they have had a run of bad luck.
Yeah. I just wish I wish they didn't get to this place in the MCU where recasting was such a a bad word. Like at the beginning, we were more okay with it, and I don't know. We just got to a point where the stars were the actors instead of the stories. And like, you're just shooting yourself in the foot because like they can't play the characters forever.
Yeah. Well, and to a degree, I sympathize with their not wanting to recast Chadwick Boseman, although I still say that was a mistake. Like, I get that more over this, at least from the standpoint of, how hugely important that actor was in playing that character to people, where he did kind of have that Christopher Reeves thing to a lot of people. But at the same time, I know I've said this before, but they had just gotten started with that character, and I think Chadwick Boseman himself probably would have liked to have seen the character continue, with somebody else at the helm. You had this really weird story, like complexity in story, with Kang, where I think that character could be just as successful as he has been because nobody seems to really care that much, or at least not enough people seem to care that much. Don't get me wrong, Loki got decent reviews. People that were really into that show were really into that show, and that is continuing with the second season. But it also had, I brought this article up too, and thanks to Austin for sending me these. Hollywood Reporter today reported that, because that's what they do, they're the Hollywood Reporter, and they reported that that Loki had a 40% drop in its ratings in the number of households looking at that program from the first episode of the second season, or from the first episode of the first season to the first episode of the second season. And so even though it's getting good reviews, and I'm hearing people say it's still, one of, if not Disney Plus's best Marvel shows, it's, for Marvel anyway, it's kind of a cult thing. I mean, it's not like everybody's watching that show. And so, anyway, that's not going to translate to huge box office numbers just because Jonathan Majors is Kang in movies. It already didn't work with Quantumania, and it was sold real hard on that guy. So I go, okay, well, if you still want to move forward with Kang, like, I don't think the Jonathan Majors thing is the reason to kill Kang or to not go much farther with it. I think it's nobody's grabbing onto that. Maybe they should pivot. Maybe that's not going to be a huge big deal for them. But if they are going to do it, go ahead and recast. Not a lot of people are going to care. But what gets weird about that, again, is they've already shown him on screen playing a bunch of different versions of him. So it is going to be a little bit weird. And I mean, that's still what I would do, DJ. But once again, how ironic is that they're going to have to do the roadie thing, maybe, and we've already seen him on screen as like 100 different variants of that character.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm fine with it, but it's the weirdest recast for sure.
The whole thing's just a mess, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what you do. Like, I'm kind of out at this point. I mean, I'm at the point with Marvel where a lot of people are with Star Wars, where they're just like, I wish Disney would just kind of sell it, and so someone else can start their version. But yeah, I don't know. I still haven't even seen Quantumania, so it would be my first time seeing Kang. the new Kang would be my Kang.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've been out for quite a while. There's a number of these you haven't bothered with. You haven't even seen Guardians 3 yet.
Yeah.
And that's completely understandable, by the way. I just mean that you're not, because I'm not really invested either. I just have continued to go because it's what I do. But I haven't been, besides Guardians 3, I haven't been remotely stoked for one of these in a long time. And we talked about that. And then the ones I've liked have been kind of, panned by a lot of people. Like, I'm not even always in the majority when it comes to the ones that I've enjoyed. Like, I thought Mouth of Madness was, Mouth of Madness. I thought Multiverse of Madness was pretty good. That's a great movie. I thought Multiverse of Madness was pretty good, and most people really, really disliked that movie.
Yeah. Consensus on that one is pretty down.
That's one of the only Phase 4 movies I thought was really quite good.
Yeah, who knows what to think anymore?
The hell do I know? And nobody saw Eternals, but you and I both liked that.
Yeah, that was fresh. It was something new, which they never do.
Let me read a few more things from this article real quick. I didn't know that you could quote people dropping F-bombs in a Variety article, but apparently you can. Marvel is truly effed with the whole Kang angle, says one top deal maker who has seen the final Loki episode, like I was just talking about, and they haven't had an opportunity to rewrite him until very recently because of the strike, but I don't see a path to how they move forward with him. And that's the argument I've been making for a long time. But beyond the bad press for majors, the brain trust at Marvel is also grappling with the November release of The Marvels, which comes out next week, and Connor and I will be reviewing that next Sunday. Quick plug for that. By the way, I sent Connor a message, and I was like, Connor, do you want to review The Marvels? And he goes, well, I mean, want is a very strong word. He goes, but I will. He's stoked.
He's a good guy.
He can't wait. This is all an unprecedented turn of fortune for a company that has enjoyed a nearly uninterrupted string of hits ever since it started independently with Iron Man. Again, I'm just going to jump around here a little bit. Everybody knows that those movies made a lot of money. Replicating that kind of phenomenon is never easy. Yada, yada, yada. And then of course there's some discussion here about how much of it is just superhero fatigue and how much of it is actual waning quality because they're making too many projects and it's too much of a machine. The Marvel machine was pumping out a lot of content. Did it get to the point where there was just too much and they were burning people out on superheroes? It is possible, says Wall Street analyst Eric Handler, who covers Disney. The more you do, the tougher it is to maintain quality. They tried experimenting with breaking in some new characters like Shang-Chi and Eternals with mixed results. With budgets as big as these, you need home runs. And I agree with that, although I've been seeing a lot of people complain that their main problem is that they keep using smaller, like C-D-list characters that nobody cares about. And I vehemently disagree with that because Guardians became huge A-list characters. The real problem isn't that you did Shang-Chi and that you did Eternals, it's that you had a ton of these like smaller, not beloved yet characters, and you couldn't introduce them in such a way that excited a lot of people like they did with Guardians. And the nice thing you had when Guardians came out too, like they expected that to be kind of niche. They didn't expect that to be accessible and do the huge guns that it did, but they could get away with that kind of risk right then because they had all these hits and they had all these characters that they had sequels to in production that they knew were probably surefire hits, that like people were going to go see the next Thor and the next Captain America and the next Iron Man, etc., etc. They don't have that right now, so it's even riskier to do something like Eternals and Shang-Chi. And I would argue that I mean, you like Shang-Chi better than I do. I think that was something of a lackluster script, but even that has been better than some of the characters that they've attempted to introduce on Disney Plus that they haven't been able to get a lot of interest in and get a lot of traction for over there. And I don't think putting She-Hulk in the theater, if they did anything like they did on the TV, on television, would have done them any more favors, really. But I think it's just dropping a bazillion of these characters, and some of them feeling even more second string because they're taking up mantles of old characters or they're tangentially related, right? Like at least Eternals and Shang-Chi were their own thing. They weren't really connected to anything else except for loosely the Ten Rings thing and like sort of reinventing the Mandarin and all of that. But
Well, and I like Shang-Chi's the last one of these I liked. But the worst parts of it are the parts where they're trying to set up new heroes that could potentially be on the Avengers. So they're like linking all this stuff and making him like super, super powerful. So it makes sense that he's on the Avengers. And like
even that movie still felt too teeny to me.
Yeah, they're clearly like, oh, we need new heroes to replace the old ones. So like Shang-Chi has to be, he can't be a street level guy. He has to be like really, really, really powerful. And then even his girlfriend has to like learn how to do archery. And like he has to meet Captain Marvel and Hulk at the end. Like all that like setup stuff was the worst part of it.
So I don't know. It's complicated, right? Because all you can do is look at what has happened retroactively and try to work your way forward and figure out what the pitfalls and the mistakes were, right? The armchair critic thing. So it's easy to look back at this and say, if only you had kept your main heroes around, you could have kept people's interest. And you couldn't keep everybody around with the same actors because not everybody would have stayed. So there's that. Like, you could have kept recasting and not aged people out or let people die or what have you, and then maybe you could have kept people's interest past Endgame or past whatever Endgame would have been, instead of that, where you didn't treat it like a big ender. Because I do think that was something of a mistake if you're not going to take a break. We've had this conversation, of course. Yeah. But at the same time, some of the characters that they have kept around have started to feel like parodies of themselves, and that hasn't helped either. So, like, a lot of people don't like their Hulk anymore and don't like their Thor anymore. Well, that's a third of your original 6 Avengers. People didn't like the Black Widow movie. That's now half your Avengers. So Hawkeye had a good TV show that not enough people watched. Captain America was written out and then replaced by Falcon in a TV show that a lot of people didn't really care for. And there's no telling if his movie is gonna actually work and be popular. Iron Man has been replaced by arguably several different characters, and nobody gives a crap about Riri Williams, who is the closest, I guess, to an Iron Man replacement. So
yeah, and they had no intention of letting War Machine take over, like would have been natural.
Yeah, well, and I think retroactively they're going to sort of pretend like that's what they're doing now, because they took Armor Wars and decided instead of making that a TV show like it was supposed to be, it's going to be a movie now. So they will probably play that like an Iron Man 4.
And I don't fully blame them. I guess it doesn't help that he's like older than Robert Downey. Like, if they had had a younger Rhodey, like if he was like Falcon's age, that probably would have been the move. But yeah, I don't know if he wants to start doing all these starring in these action movies, because he's like almost 60 at this point. He's probably like,
That's a really good point. So I don't know. The answer was probably always multi-generational heroes, replace the new generation gradually, slowly with the next. But I think you have to do it somewhat more gradually than they did, and you have to not have and I don't know. The simple thing is, they have to grab people. People, they have to speak to enough of us, and they've had a couple that I've really liked, but they wouldn't support a whole movie by themselves. Like, I really like the new Hawkeye, and Miss Marvel is fine, as obnoxious as she seems in that trailer with the Marvels. We'll see what she's actually like in that movie, but they just don't have those heavy hitters anymore.
Yeah, it's just the problem with like going with the Avengers, like the MCU just being the Avengers movies is like, they should have went in a different direction. Like the Avengers are done at the end of Infinity War or Endgame. Like, we don't need. Don't bring the Avengers back for a while. Just let's do different stories. Let the MCU be more than just a bunch of setup movies for Avengers movies.
Well, and we've talked about this before, but to that point, and again, this is easy to say in hindsight, but they felt like the TV shows needed to be the same kind of events that the movies were, and that turned into making TV shows too much like movies, where they're just movie plots stretched out into 10 episodes. And because of that, you lost people pretty early with those shows, and what you probably should have done, and what they're now pivoting and they're going to do instead, is actually make TV shows that are TV shows and have more of an episodic format. And I think it's really interesting comparing this to the history now of New Trek, because New Trek has done exactly the same thing. It's gone, our shows were too convoluted when they were a whole season story arc, and people weren't liking that, and we ran out of ideas very quickly because we didn't know how to write those kinds of stories, and we were really plotting by the seat of our pants. So they did Strange New Worlds, and it was more episodic like Star Trek always used to be, and suddenly, some people came back to Star Trek and people were liking it more. However you feel about that show, and that's exactly what Marvel is going to start doing now with their shows. And that's probably what they should have done in the first place. Now, I still say they could have done some great miniseries that were plotted more like miniseries. But they didn't need one on all the time.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, if they had done more episodic shows, DJ, they could have run this more like a comic book company and had shows on all the time that you could come in and out of and you didn't have to see everything. And I've said this before, too. Part of the huge problem with this is communication. People were confused and didn't know how much of all of this they had to watch. And Marvel made it feel like you're still supposed to look at everything because they were running the TV department too much like the movie department, and with the same head of both. So, go back and look at something like the CW. And I can't believe I'm using this as a positive example, but the CW DC shows, when people were still engaged in those, and even after those had jumped the shark for me, and I was more on my way out with them, they still had a big enough fan base, and I think it's important to note that at one time they had like 4 different shows on at once, and it wasn't like the Disney Plus thing where it's one at a time, and at any point you can tune into one of these shows. They were on fall and spring all at the same time, and that wasn't too much for people. You had people watching all 4 of them, Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, and Legends, and you didn't hear people complaining that there were too many of them on if they were liking them. And I think a lot of that was because it was regular episodic television. We've had universes like this for shows, for like sci-fi and other genre shows and things, and even cop shows and stuff, in the same universe, where you can jump in and out of them. They're kind of more episodic. They're actually television shows. So like Marvel could have done that if they had made it clear that you didn't have to look at everything, and if the shows had been different enough and appealed to different audiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're in a big hole. They've dug themselves quite the hole.
Yeah. So when I've said oversaturation in the past, it's kind of more quality than anything.
And just the right pick the right. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
And just pick the right characters. Like WandaVision and Hawkeye were my 2 favorites, and they were perfect. Like, this is Wanda's a character that people really like, but she's probably not ever going to get a movie. So give her a show. Same thing with Hawkeye. It doesn't really make sense to do a full Hawkeye movie because he's so into S.H.I.E.L.D. in the movie. Like he's just kind of like an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the movie version. So like he'd be perfect sense for a show to set up a new one. But I don't know, some of their choices for what gets a show.
If you were going to do a Hawkeye movie, it should have been a Hawkeye Black Widow movie.
Yeah, which would have been great.
That would have been the way to handle that. And
if you were going to do a Black Widow movie, you should have done a Hawkeye and Black Widow.
Her movie
Too bad they never did a Black Widow movie.
Well, her movie felt like it was missing him. Like they had this. It's basically another team movie. And Red, whatever his name is, was fine. I mean, he was an okay character. Yeah. But I couldn't get real into that whole supporting. Well, and even like who's supposed to be set up as the second Black Widow, she's okay too. But I don't know, just that whole dynamic didn't really do anything for me in that film. Maybe it was just the story more than anything.
I think so, because she's much better, and I liked her a lot more in Hawkeye.
She's great in that. Yeah, absolutely. But, like, real quick, let's run down some of these premises, because when Disney Plus started, I was definitely not already on the train of, oh, God, there's too many of these, and they all sound, like, pointless and awful, and you need to axe half of them. I mean, I was nervous that we were doing so many at once, but I didn't have a problem with hardly any of the premises. I was very excited about Falcon and Winter Soldier, and it just wasn't good. I mean, like you said, pick the right characters, but it's kind of more about adapting the characters.
Correctly.
Correctly, no, yeah. I don't know how else to put it.
That whole aspect of the MCU we hadn't seen since Winter Soldier. It should have been Rhodey. It should have been all 3 of those guys should have got to shine in that. No.
Secret Invasion was a good idea to do as a miniseries.
And it was the best show they've done. Flawless.
He's being very facetious. But, like, you know, I wasn't looking down on that, like, oh god, why are you making that a show? Like, yeah, give Nick Fury his own show, make it an espionage thriller where you don't know, you know, who you can trust and who's the Skrull. Like, arguably, it's easier to tell a really cool story with that material with more episodes, but they stretched it and they didn't have a cool story to tell. Loki was a kind of an odd choice, I thought, but it was pretty inventive and I liked the premise with it, and it felt like a TV show. So like, and that's why I got a second season.
Scene, yeah, well, that's like the one they clearly knew that they were doing, because that scene in Endgame exists only so he can have that show. Like,
that's it. Yeah,
they just wanted a Loki that they could use to do more stuff with, so they put that whole scene in there.
I'm not going to read any more of this down now because somehow we've already been talking close to an hour, and I want to get to at least a couple questions before the break. But I just wanted to mention this is the whole reason we were here in the first place. Just the strategies real quick. So the big things that they're doing is they're going to be slashing budgets. Hallelujah. We've been saying forever that's what they need to do. Here is a Collider article that came out the other day about the Blade movie. They finally made some decisions about this. So Marvel's Blade reboot given shockingly low budget, according to report, and I want to think that this is probably the first of many of these, where they'll probably start greenlighting things with less bloated, explosive budgets. The wait for MCU Blade has been a lengthy one. That is an understatement.
It's the new Mutants.
Delayed time and time again after initially hoping to get out of the door in 2023. Yada yada. Part of this has to do with the revolving door of creatives that has seen the film go through a total of at least 5 writers. I think you could probably quadruple that number, but but yeah, at least 5 writers. In a wide-ranging piece from Variety that I was just reading, it was revealed that there were plans to make Blade on a budget of less than $100 million, which sounds perfect to me.
I hope they just call it Blade on a budget too, like Batman Begins.
They should call it Blade Begins.
Budget Blade.
But that's even better. Budget Blade. A smaller budget may be exactly what Blade needs to finally get on track, especially since Feige has now found a strong combination of creatives to get things underway, and I agree with that, DJ. He's brought aboard Logan writer Michael Green to help fix the script. I wish he could just start over entirely and not have to work with whatever it is they've been dealing with, but that sounds potentially like the right guy for this project. And you know, there was that discussion recently that Feige had maybe said, or somebody at Marvel, that they're trying to pick, you know, big major directors and not just workman directors. And I'm like, artist directors. And I'm like, well, I would be excited to hear you say that about the writers. You know, and now we've got one. Here's like a guy that can write, that has had a good track record. So, isn't that exciting?
Yeah,
and wrote a great R-rated violent superhero film. That's the kind of thing you want for this.
You just hope it's not too late, because a lot of times studios are just like, all right, we paid for a good writer, so he can fix this, and it's like, well, it's already almost done. Like, what? Sometimes you can't. I don't know. I just hope he's given enough leeway to actually make significant changes instead of just like put a fresh coat of paint on this so it feels like your script, and then we can just move forward, because that's a lot of time what you deal with assembly line production. I mean, that's what I deal with every day at my job. It's like, no, we don't want to actually fix all the UX, the user experience design in this site. Just make it look pretty on the front so that it looks like we did something new.
Yeah, it's really unrealistic, and you have this, lack of perspective. It's a
minimal effort with maximal. We want the least amount of effort we can do to maximize profits.
Well, what you're saying is we see what the problem is, but we don't want to be realistic enough to move dates or to move dates any farther. And Marvel needs to just take a breather here. I mean, I still say, even now, it would be a good idea to take 2 or 3 years off and not put out anything and make people kind of forget about Marvel entirely and then just have a big return. Hell, it worked for X-Men back with First Class.
Are they still doing 3 a year? Did 3 come out this year? I don't even pay attention to what comes out. They had Ant-Man. They're going to have Marvels.
And then did they have anything else this year?
Oh, Guardians 3. Yeah, they're still doing 3 a year on top of all the Disney Plus.
Now, again, keep in mind that they are scaling way back with the Disney Plus shows. So here's the thing. I will give them the 3 a year thing, but they need to go at least a year without one to like really take their time and get these things polished and make sure that they know what story they want to tell. I mean, they're pushing for Blade to come out 2025. And they just put a writer on it to fix the script. I would be again, steps in the right direction, absolutely. I'm not rooting for MCU to fail by any stretch of the imagination. I'm gonna give them accolades where they're deserved, but I would be more confident in this if they said 2026. You know, if they had an extra year, because that still sounds rushing it.
I mean, hopefully if it's a low enough budget, you know, it won't take as long post-production. They can, I mean, Blade doesn't need a huge budget, but it doesn't need to be Morbius. Like, just do...
Well, nothing needs to be that.
Do a low-key, low-stakes, no pun intended, Blade movie that doesn't have to be world-ending or earth-shattering or sky beams.
So real quick, the couple of things that, because I didn't get to them in that article, that people were saying were debunked. Pardon me.
Superhero
I put
Rebunked.
Together.
That's the new show.
I put together rebuked and debunked as a word.
I like
rebunked in the Variety article were the idea that Blade in a draft was relegated to the fourth major character of his own movie, and that actor almost walked over it. And what was debunked about it, and I don't consider this a real, debunking, was that one of the many writers from that movie that left before they had even more drafts, DJ, came out on Twitter and said, I never saw a draft where he was relegated to the fourth major character of the movie, but that might have happened after I left. So we still don't know. That doesn't completely discredit the thing in that article. And the real news here is that I can't remember his name. Is that actor almost
Mahershala?
Yeah. He that writer did not debunk the idea that he almost walked away from the project. That's the real news here. Is that they had enough creative differences that he felt like he wasn't going to be, a big enough part of that movie. And I don't want to split hairs with this. I don't care if he was the whole write-up with the article was he's relegated to the fourth character in his own film, and that the whole thing centers around a plot where there's a main female character and he kind of supports her. That wouldn't surprise me if that's what they were doing, but even if it's not, if he's the second most important character in his own movie, it's still a problem. The thing is called Blade, and that seems likely. I don't want to get into the gender politics with this. I don't care about that. What's important to note is, as we were talking about earlier with Black Widow, these things can't not be team movies.
Yeah. It's like Blade Trinity again.
Yeah. So they're going,
Except it's the first one.
We can't trust this actor to, carry the weight of his own movie and really make it a character piece about this one guy. We've got to try to appeal to everybody. So, of course, it's got to be a team of people that superficially everybody can see themselves in.
Yeah, when the heck was the last time we did one that wasn't a team movie?
They don't make them.
Doctor Strange, 2016? What?
Yeah.
Why does every single one have to be... I can't even remember.
At least Multiverse of Madness, and you didn't see that, but at least that movie was more of a Marvel team up, and where it was just kind of two superheroes, and then
that's cool.
They dealt with other heroes from other universes briefly, but they didn't all come together to form a big team at the end. it was America Chavez, who I loved in that, and couldn't believe I did, but she was great, with Doctor Strange. Well, that's a real classic Marvel thing to do. That's fine, and it was very appropriate for the movie because her superpowers are all about navigating universes.
Yeah, but that's his second movie, and that's after he's already done a couple Avengers
Yeah,
movies.
at least we didn't start with it. It's not the Shang-Chi thing.
With team movies, yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. That was the real news there for me. If that's true, that's a problem. And then the other thing was that the Variety article claimed that the director of the Marvels left, like, in the middle of making it to go make some other movie while there were still, like, months left to work on the movie. And somebody, I don't know who, at Marvel has come out and said that that wasn't true. I don't know about that whole thing, but that wasn't even part of what I wanted to talk about with this article anyway.
Yeah, so I think we solved it. You know, just do what we said, Marvel, and you'll be fine.
I think the first and foremost, right out the gate, they need to not pull a DC in 2016 and freak out when the Marvels doesn't make very much money. Because it won't, and they know that, and that should be kind of a relic of the mistakes they were making before, and they should just pull themselves up by the bootstraps and be smarter about what they make moving forward. That was never gonna get people excited. Honestly, DJ, I think what they should have done is, and people won't agree with this, and people always like to argue, but Captain Marvel made $1 billion. And obviously, my response to that, like a lot of people's, has always been, yeah, but that was in the middle of this huge high, and people thought they needed to see that movie to see Endgame. So it wasn't really because of that character. Whatever they put out in between those two movies, Infinity War and Endgame, was going to do big guns for them. It wouldn't have mattered what it was. It could have been Damage Control. It would have made at least $800 million. It wouldn't have mattered. So I don't think.
That would be amazing. It's just the woman from the beginning of Homecoming, the sassy woman.
And it got good. It got good reviews from professional critics and stuff, but it didn't set the world on fire. In, like it didn't do great with merchandising. You could tell that kids weren't as into that character as some of the other Marvel superheroes. It was kind of obvious that they hadn't created another cultural phenomenon with that. I think Captain Marvel needed to get put in, and they didn't have another Avengers movie right after that, and I realized that, but before they did a sequel for her, she needed to maybe be in somebody else's movie to get a sense of to kind of test the waters and see if there was even enough interest in her continuing with her own franchise. What they did instead was this weird compromised thing where they went, well, she is clearly not a big enough box office draw by herself now, so we'll bring these other two TV show characters from shows that, I mean, WandaVision did really well, but Miss Marvel didn't really, from shows that people maybe didn't look at, and make everybody feel like they have to watch all our stuff so they can see this movie. I don't know how smart that was either. I would have maybe put, I don't know if you could have got Brie Larson to do that. I would have put Captain Marvel in a TV show first, I think. I don't know. I guess I'm not sure what you do with that. But I don't think anything with her was going to do huge guns in the theater, and certainly not what has been sold as a comedy. Have you seen the recent trailers for that, like the last big trailer they put out for that?
I haven't seen anything for that.
It's a bunch of footage from the TV shows that won't be in that movie.
Oh, it's like last time on MCU.
Yeah, it's kind of like a recap trailer, and I don't think that helps educate people so much as it makes them go, I didn't see any of this, I'm out. Unless they did, and then they're reminded of that stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, I like Monica Rambeau, I'll go to that movie. But, like, how many of us are there with that?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense to do as a refresher, because it's been years since those shows came out.
Yeah.
Especially WandaVision.
PlushDX says not enough teams, too many teams. I don't know what he means by that. He says a common complaint is there aren't enough team-ups. Really? Because my biggest complaint is there's too many teams. And we can't we haven't been allowed to do enough singular stories. The team-up thing, when it's just two characters, has been pretty successful for them. The Hawkeye thing with the female Hawkeye was a great, like, you know, duo kind of show.
Yeah.
And I still say you could have made that a movie and put it in the theater, but it doesn't have that decompressed problem that those shows have. For the most part, it works fine as a miniseries.
And it's shorter. I think it's like 6.
Yeah.
Is it only 6?
But don't you think? I think it is just 6. But I think that would have been successful in the theater.
Yeah, I think that could have easily been made a movie. You cut out the weird like second episode where he goes on like a LARPing adventure for the whole time. Like, get rid of that. trim the fat a little bit and make that a movie.
Don't put Kingpin in it. Not for the theater.
Yeah, you could have done. I mean, yeah, that because he kind of undercut the villain they were setting up the whole time.
Yeah,
because she's like fighting someone else the whole time in the last episode or something. Just let her be the villain. I don't know.
Okay, so I've been rambling for far too long, which is not new, but we are already at an hour. Let's go ahead and answer a question or two real quick. If you can throw something out, and then we'll go ahead and take a break and come back for the second half, and we can keep talking about this, or we can talk about anything else you guys want to.
Well, I'll go ahead and read Lewis Cox's super chat because it's not really a question, but it's about what we're talking about.
Cool.
He put a super chat in that said, and it's in pounds or euros. I didn't realize Lewis Cox was overseas. That's awesome. What can save MCU? Marvel can. LOL. So he's confident.
Well, I think he's just saying that, you know, they're the only people that can save themselves.
Somebody save me.
It's a crisis on not so infinite MCUs.
Wait a second, Lewis. You're saying that all of us armchair critics on YouTube can't save Marvel?
We can't save it?
Oh, well, then what are we doing here?
I keep kind of bashing us over the head with DJ. In a perfect world, at this point, I really would just straight up reboot the thing. But I do think there is still a glimmer of hope if they get really smart about, you know, what characters they pick and how much stuff they put out, and take the right kind of risks that they could maybe bring things back. But I would take some time off from it, which they won't do.
And then we got another super chat from TH1. We'll just answer this and then I guess take a break. $5. Scarier, waking up and being blind and deaf, or waking up and being paralyzed. Paralyzed. I'm just going to read it how it is. Paralyzed from the neck down. You guys are awesome. I love you guys. So hold on.
That was from last show, Tom.
Wrong show, Tom.
We did the scary things last show. Well, I don't want.
Thought of it right after the stream and was like, "Oh, dang it!"
I don't want the majority of my body to be made out of pearls. That sounds.
That sounds like being frozen in carbonite.
So I'm sorry. So what was it? What's scarier between being paralyzed and what's the other thing?
Blind and deaf, or being paralyzed from the neck down.
No, blind and deaf is much scarier.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the sensory deprivation thing would bother me a lot more than not being able to move and touch things. Because if I still could see and hear, I would be able to watch things, listen to things, and write via speech.
And YouTube, you'd still be able.
And
to
I could
YouTube.
Still do YouTube, yeah.
As long as you had someone to set up your streams for you and do all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean Christopher Reeve was an inspiration in educating the universe on how to have on how to live a fulfilling life in that predicament. Much harder to do if you couldn't see or hear anything.
Yeah. Although, like, didn't they say that Helen Keller flew a plane at some point? But I don't want to. I don't want to have to live up to Helen Keller's example. That's tough.
Yeah, no. I'm lazier than that.
No, I would accomplish nothing. That would be terrifying though. I mean, at least I can still speak because I learned to speak before I became blind and deaf. But whew,
Yeah.
not being able to hear anyone talk back to me would be terrible.
Code Geese says they cast a good actor to play Blade. I hope he gets something to do. Yeah, me too. And I was excited about that casting choice. As odd as it is that he was already a villain in Luke Cage. That'll be the first time that we've had somebody that played two major characters in sort of MCU things. Although at this point it's dicey in saying how much of that stuff even counts now. But we have had actors that have played multiple roles in the MCU, but it's always like a major role and a really minor one. I think I'm right. This will be the first time we've had... it'll certainly be the first time we've had somebody play a hero and a villain both, I think, in the MCU.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I love Cottonmouth.
Hopefully he gets cool stuff. Apparently, Austin said in the chat that the only reason they're making the movie is because he came to them and wanted to play Blade.
He and I were talking about this earlier privately, and he reminded me of that. I forgot about that, and I said, yeah, sometimes they lose sight of why they make these things. Because he was like, if you lose him, why would you even make it at that point? Because you announced it, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense that it's had such a storied past, because if they only were making it for him and it didn't really fit into their plans, then I could see why they would be all like stumbling and fumbling it and not really knowing what to do with it. And then if he came to them with like super like rigid ideas of what he wanted to do with it, and then they didn't do that, then of course he's going to want to walk. So
yeah,
kind of all makes sense.
By the way, let me just take a step back for a second and say I don't envy Kevin Feige's position with all of this at all whatsoever. Some people were suggesting in the comments that he is clearly really tired and burnt out and they need new blood now. And I've been saying that for a long time too. But if he's going to stay in that job, I certainly empathize a little bit. You know, I certainly feel bad for the predicament they're in, even though I think they certainly created some of it for themselves. And I think they made some mistakes that, in my mind, were pretty clearly the wrong move. But there's other things where you couldn't have known really what was going to happen. So, you know, I'm not making fun of the guy. I don't mean to knock the guy. But I do think it's maybe taken him, and unless this was all kind of PR stuff, I do think it's maybe taken him a little bit too long to realize just how serious the situation is, because he and the other executives were talking for a long time like it was business as usual and like they were too big to fail and they could do no wrong. And I felt like I was seeing the writing on the wall kind of before maybe they were, or at least before they were acknowledging it. Now they're in a place where they just cannot help but acknowledge it. So the reason I'm mentioning that is to say, if at any point in our discussion tonight I have like accidentally contradicted myself or like complained about a thing that I then later said, well, maybe you would have to do this. This is a mess. I mean, it's really difficult to say what exactly you change, tweak, you'll clean up, revolve around. So like I think it's kind of difficult not to accidentally be contradictory in places. You know, when I say like you got to pick the right characters, like we were kind of talking about, we were kind of having that conversation, DJ, where it's like you got to be careful about who you pick, but then maybe it's more important that you just adapt characters correctly, or like if you held on to characters people cared about longer, maybe you could keep the train running as popular longer, but then we watched characters turn into self-parody. Like, it's hard. But that's not me saying that the real problem with this is there's no way that you could have an MCU that lasts more than 10 years without falling apart. I don't actually believe that either.
Yeah, but I think there is an element of that. Like, nothing stays popular forever. Even if they had kept making things of the same quality, it eventually would have, you know, people would have moved on to something else. There's a little bit of that. Obviously, I don't think that they did keep making films of the same quality.
No, they didn't. And that's where I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that or not. I don't know. You're probably right, but I always said that the MCU after Endgame had at least 10 or 15 years left, no matter what they did. And we're in like 4 or 5 now, and they've only just now had enough flops that they're in like real danger, possibly. So I was right about that. There's no way they don't make at least 5 years more of content, even if all of it tanks, right? They're going to make at least 5 more years of content.
Yeah.
But all they have to do is what they're going to do with Blade, slash budgets a little bit and not make movies for everybody. There's no reason that studio has to always have billion-dollar productions. I mean, as far as like what it rakes in. That Variety article was also talking about how Quantumania only did $450 million, which is only a huge failure because of how much money they sunk into it. And if it was less ambitious and a smaller budget and a smaller movie, like if it cost half of what it did, that movie, no matter what they did with it, probably still does about that much money. And then it would have been considered a success.
Yeah, you had he was your safe bet. He was the one that you could make low budget movies with, and people still came out because they liked him. I mean, the second one was not that great, but that was what you set him up as in the first movie. Was like, this is our lower budget, lower stakes character, and people fell in love with him and they liked him, and then you screwed it. You messed it up. Like, that was the one safe bet you had, and then you turned him into an Avengers movie.
Like, the fact that movie looked as not great as it was, and then people really didn't care for it, and it still did 450, tells you that at least right then there was still enough interest in this stuff to pull it along for another decade, even if you never got to the same heights you did before. I think the problem is that the people in charge, I kind of get this. You get used to being a phenomenon.
Oh yeah, I think Spider-Verse, whatever it's called, No Way Home, was very bad for them.
It stroked their egos too hard.
They learned all the wrong lessons from it. It made them think there was more interest in the phase than there actually was.
No, that was all about a gimmick. Yeah. It was exactly the same thing, and I hate it when people use this as an argument. But Cap, look how much money Guardians made. Yeah, and Guardians was the end game. Guardians 3 was the end game for Guardians.
Yeah,
you know, like, and they're done with that now. It doesn't matter if they make any more. They lost Gunn and they lost that team, and that's why it made money. And it's exactly the same thing as what you're talking about with Spider-Man. It was a gimmick. It didn't have anything to do with the phase or MCU at large. That was fans of 3 different iterations of a franchise all coming together. Mm-hmm. To get to see a thing that that had never been done in movies before. Now we've done it. It's not going to be a big deal again. Not like that. Yeah. It wasn't with Flash.
That was also 3 characters that nobody cared about.
Which is so weird because it's not like they took a Supergirl from a universe we'd seen before. That's true, though. It is sort of that, right? It's like, oh, we got this... we got all these characters from different universes together. Who we're gonna have over at Marvel? We're gonna have a thing you never thought you'd get to see. We're gonna have 3 of the same character from different franchises, and it's gonna be a historic moment, a game-changing film. And what we're gonna do over at DC is we're gonna take nobody's favorite Flash.
Yeah.
We're going to have some people's favorite Batman, but most of them are over 40.
And now he's geriatric and, like, can barely do anything.
And a version of a character from another universe that is a new variant of a character we never introduced in the first place.
Oh, man.
We can't wait, kids! But then I have this question with Flash. And then, sorry, we'll go to break here in a second. We'll have a lopsided second section. We can't even say half.
Yeah, we'll have our own phase 4 after this half.
But riddle me this, and this should have happened because Flash got put off for so long that ended up starting to look like New Mutants too. We've had this conversation. If Flash had come out before No Way Home, how much better does it do at the box office just because it gets to the history-breaking thing in film first? In having characters
it does better. I don't know how much better, because...
I don't think it does. It doesn't do $2 billion. It doesn't do $1.8 billion. Like,
and I think Spider-Man still does the same, even if it comes out after, because it's a different... enough thing.
I think you're right. I don't think Flash hurts that movie, but I think that movie not coming first it helps that tremendously.
Yeah, but I mean, it still would have had bad word of mouth after the fact, but that initial bump would have probably been a little higher.
You know, there is a reason that there's one reason that I'm very happy that Flash came out as late as it did, though, and that's so that we could get all the awkward merchandising of Batman stuff from the Flash movie as Batman 89 merchandising, and then see it repackaged as Flash merch after Flash comes out. It's one of the oddest things I've ever seen happen in retail, and I loved it.
Yeah, if you're an inbox collector, you could have collected that stuff with both packaging.
I bought and I mean, he wanted it and it was on sale, so I might have gotten it anyway. But when I found out that Flash 89 Batman suit was out for Halloween last year with the 89 logo, I had to have it just for the packaging. Oh, I thought that was great. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, folks, and thanks for sticking around with us through a very long lead-in topic that I can't even call a lead-in topic. It's just the show now, but we can talk about whatever you guys want to after this.
Whoa!
Did you do that on purpose? So whatever gestures you're making, if something is on Skype that is making stuff, it's not working on my end because I
have powers.
Because
oh, look at that.
Because I'm not through Skype. Oh, weird.
I just made fireworks somehow. I don't know how I did that.
Just do one thumb.
One thumb is it puts a thumbs up.
Yeah, I didn't do it this time.
Oh well.
What happens if you point?
My oh there it is. Oh,
it was delayed.
My powers are on the fritz. Yeah, it's not it's not immediate. What do you want from me? I'm making things appear out of thin air. It takes a minute.
Yeah, he's gonna have to get used to using his omnipotent powers. They're a little sluggish so far.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna get going. We're not gonna get going. We'll be right back. It's time for a break, and we'll see you for the second section of the Captain Logan Show here in a little bit. Feel free to throw in more questions, and we'll see you in just a bit. We are back, folks. It's time for, a few more minutes of the Captain Logan Show.
Just an encore, really.
We have already been going on for quite a while. Oh, sorry, more music is playing.
Oh. That's the dance again.
We got into the break real late because just more stuff kept coming to me about this whole giant impossible math problem that is the conundrum right now of the MCU, and something that we didn't really discuss enough that I want to bring up again just real quick, tack this on, DJ, is that we mentioned that one of the things in the Variety article that I didn't read about was they're kind of kicking around. Oh, a couple things actually. First of all, they were kicking around replacing Kang as the big bad for this phase with Doctor Doom. That was the thing they were talking about doing. And I kind of doubt that'll happen, but that was one of the ideas they were messing around with. So they really know that Kang is both not as popular as they were hoping, and that they've got this actor they probably can't work with now. And then the other thing, it would be kind of odd to introduce Doctor Doom before the FF, I guess, but it would excite potentially more people, and if you did it right, it could be a really good link between these phases we've had so far and all the X-Men and FF stuff they're going to do later.
I think he could make it work because he is his own thing outside of the Fantastic Four. He's got his own literal land
and can be super powerful.
Yeah, I would actually like him to be separated for a little bit, just based on what we did last time, or both last times, where he's so connected to their origins that it's just a Fantastic Four thing. But I really don't want them to introduce Doom with Secret Wars, because I know he's a huge part of that, but I want him to be established before that. Also, what is even the point of Secret Wars anymore? There's no novelty to it, because the entire MCU is just the Marvel Universe crossing over with each other. So the big novelty of Secret Wars is just another Avengers movie.
Well, and that's a good segue into the other thing I want to mention, which is that weird notion of doing already kind of a reunion Avengers movie with the original Avengers and resurrecting Robert Downey's Iron Man and all of that. And there's been a lot of speculation that, and Austin has said this a lot, that they'll probably bring back Robert Downey for Secret Wars. So if they did that Avengers movie, would it be before or after Secret Wars? Because if they did it before that, Secret Wars would then be really pointless.
Yeah, I guess if they can pivot into Secret Wars as just the reunion film, then it has some novelty to it. But
yeah, and bringing in stuff from a bunch of other old movie franchises. But Deadpool 3 is already going to do some of that now.
Yeah, that won't feel old at all by that time. That's all we've been doing lately. That's you don't want that to be another cameo train thing. Especially one where we know about every single cameo before it happens.
And here's the thing. If you don't make it a cameo movie and you make it an actual team of characters from different universes that we've seen before, where you flesh those characters out and you do really cool character dynamics with them, I'm on board for that. I am. But you can't make the whole thing just the gimmick of, look, you get to see these characters together again. You have to actually tell a story with it. And if you did that, it could be cool. But I just the novelty of it doesn't necessarily make it a $1 billion or $2 billion movie again. I mean, there's the question of what the box office is. But I just wanted to mention that once again that I feel like that would be a really desperate looking move. It sounds like that came up during their retreat as one of the possible fixes for the woes that they're having. And I'm like, well, that's a quick Band-Aid. That's the same thing that you had with, and I'm not suggesting that they're saying that's the only thing that they should do, but that's the same thing that you had with No Way Home, where it's that movie made a bunch of money, but you only get one of those. You don't get to keep doing that. Now, that might open the doorway to...
Everybody gets one, kid.
Now, that could open the doorway to another, Tobey Maguire franchise if you wanted to do that, and you could have you could have a popular follow-up with the Tobey Maguire movie, but you can't keep doing exactly that, where it's reunion thing, get a bunch of characters from different franchises together all in a movie. In the same way as you can't recreate Avengers again.
Yeah, Sony.
Civil War got close because there were so many of them, and Infinity War got close because it was so epic. But
you brought in the Guardians and people who hadn't been in there yet.
That's true. Yeah.
It's so weird. So like Marvel teed you up, Sony. They said they softballed it to you so you could make a Tobey Maguire franchise, and instead you're making Morbius and Craven and whatever else you're doing.
Yeah, because whether you or I want that, Spider-Man 4 is the next thing you do if you're Sony.
If you're Sony, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have anything else. All you have is Spider-Man.
we did a what if show where we talked not too long ago, where I put that in the title. We talked about the idea of Spider-Man 4 now, and I think it could be successful. I think that's what they should be doing probably.
Tobey Maguire 4 or Andrew Garfield 3 would both perform better than Morbius or Craven's about to. Anything would have been.
And I don't.
Sony's an enigma.
I don't want to see more multiverse team up stuff, but even a movie with the both of them together as a duo, that would make them a lot of money. I'm just talking about the business end of it.
Spider-Man, yeah, just call it Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, absolutely. Again, I don't want that, but you're gonna do Morbius instead of that. You're gonna do Craven instead of that. You're gonna do Venom 3 probably instead of this. Stop it. I mean, at least the Venom movies
Sony's gonna do what Sony's gonna do, man, and I'm here for it.
The Venom movies.
I'm not gonna watch any of the films, but I'm here to laugh.
You're not here for you. You're here to roll your eyes at. You're gonna do Madam Web instead of that. Okay.
Sony, man. Just keep being you, Sony. You do you.
Look, if they brought Downey back and they did I keep calling it a reunion thing. If they had the 6 Avengers in a movie together again, of course it would make more money than some of the stuff they've been doing lately. But again, you get one of those. It's not like that's now your franchise again moving forward, and it would cheapen Endgame for people. Absolutely it would.
But that's the thing is, they don't care. We've gotten to a place with franchise movies where they don't even care if anyone goes back to their old stuff. It's so disposable at this point. They don't care about the history of their franchise. They're trying to make money now. They've already spent that money.
It's so complicated, though. On the business end of it, they don't. But then when it does good business for them, they do, because they love putting out commercials including footage of people in their movies from 2, 3, 5 years ago applauding when big things happen. And they had I didn't see it, but Austin told me about it. I forgot to watch this. I should have watched it. They apparently did, DJ, a horror trailer for Halloween where they put in where it was just a quick clip show of a bunch of scary things that happen in the MCU, and they weren't all even horror type movies. They had the ants all jumping on Ant-Man and stuff like that. It's preposterous.
Ants. Big damn ants.
Plus, EDX says a few strange people genuinely think Downey permanently returns. That's crazy.
Well, he hasn't done any. Well, he was just in Oppenheimer, so he's doing.
And even if he did, how long could he do that before it just gets embarrassing? Because people age. They get older. How many more action movies does the man have in him?
Well, luckily, he just has to record a POV shot of his head.
That's a good point.
In a suit, so he can kind of do it forever.
And he still looks good. I'm not saying that you couldn't do one more thing with him, but I don't think you'd want him for a whole franchise again.
No,
I wouldn't think he would want to do that.
No, he was tired. That's why he left. Get me out of here. Chris Evans was tired. Give me a break.
I'll also say, and I'm not making a really impassioned statement when I say this. Okay, I'm not stoked.
No, he's all in on this.
I'm not stoked to see Downey come back because it'd be nice if we could keep characters dead. And that was a much bigger deal for other people than it was to me, but that made people feel things. I think you should keep him dead, and I think you shouldn't even go to other versions of him where he's not technically been resurrected. However, I know they'll do that, and it's not going to bother me that much if we get, like, one more movie, like a Secret Wars, where we see a version of Iron Man who has not died from another universe, and we come in and we do a couple scenes with it, and we get out. I'm okay with that. I really am. But you can't resurrect him.
They haven't been working out in years. He's going to come back and look like the emaciated Tony Stark when he comes back from space in Endgame, but that's just going to be what he looks like.
Well,
yes.
You can tell a story where he never became Iron Man. You can do that. That'd be all right.
There you go. He still looks like he does in the first Iron Man.
Although that would be horrible, because then he would also probably degenerate into parody, where they go, well, wouldn't it be fun? That'll be the what if, right? It'll be, what if Tony Stark stayed an arrogant bastard?
And that's all he is.
That's all he is. Let's answer some questions, and you guys feel free to ask about anything you want to. We've only got about 25 minutes left in the show, so what I want to do, DJ, is for the remainder of this, I want to make it as close to rapid fire as possible, because we've answered
I need lots of questions.
We've answered almost no questions at all this show, so let's see if we can do like 10 or 15 for the last 20-25 minutes.
All right, guys, send me some questions. I'm going to start with what I had at the beginning of the show. You ready, sir?
Yeah, get them in there, folks. Give us some questions. Ask me anything you want to. Let's go.
Simographic. Which fictional planet feels more dangerous? Krypton, a Class M planet, or Cybertron, a non-Class M planet?
Well, one of them, I mean, they both explode. So, well, no, I think Cybertron's still there. I don't think it actually blows up, does it? I think it's like they can't go back and inhabit it. I don't know enough about Transformers. Does Cybertron explode? I actually don't know the answer to that.
But yeah, he sees your question with another question, sir. Does Cybertron explode?
Yeah, seriously. But forgetting that for a moment, it just depends on what era we're talking about, because they both have big wars that happen on them, and horrible things that you have to deal with. So at their most peaceful, I guess the planet where everyone isn't a walking gun is probably technically less dangerous.
Omari Daniels, can you guys rank green naked characters next?
No, I think we're done with the naked characters.
Oh, but I wanted to go on so bad.
I know you do. Well, I'll bring you in for some other
come back with a reunion
thing. And by the way, the last couple weeks I just haven't had a chance to get in and do more tier lists, but I am planning to do more of those. I got sick last week, and the day I got sick, I had set up a tier list for villains in Batman TAS, so that is probably the next one I'll do. But I was going to do that last Tuesday, and then this Tuesday was Halloween, so I couldn't do it then either. But I'll try to get a tier list out again here pretty soon. Those are a lot of fun to make.
All right.
Oh, AMC says it does become uninhabitable. Okay, well then,
but it doesn't explode.
Post the respective species leaving the planet, Krypton would be... No, Cybertron would be more dangerous because there would be no Krypton, so if you went there and you had a spaceship, you'd be fine.
There you go.
You're comparing a planet to a lack of a planet at that point.
Connor Nielsen, what is scarier, going into a haunted location or bringing a haunted item into your home? I guess he missed last week's stream, so he just wanted to...
Yeah, he and Tom both are like, we didn't get to do that. We want to engage in the novelty, too. I think... yeah, I mean, it depends on what the haunted thing is, and if you actually believe that it's full-on haunted. But I want to say, probably going someplace scary is scarier than bringing a thing back to your place. You probably forget you had it. For a couple minutes, you'd be like, "Oh God, the scary thing," and then you just forget that you had it.
Yeah, and I mean, at least you can leave the haunted location, but you're stuck in your house with this haunted object.
Yeah. You'd feel like there's more ways to get hurt or wrecked in a haunted house.
Did you just say get hurt erect?
No, or wrecked. Or get wrecked.
I was like, wow, this haunted object only hurts you when you're erect. What is this haunted object?
It only affects males, too. Oh, you mean when you're standing?
Yeah, that's what I was saying, but there you go.
Can we move on?
Sure, let's try. Alex Barron, I don't know. I have a feeling that's going to completely derail the show. Are there any directors you think consistently elevate mediocre scripts? For me, Hitchcock and De Palma fit the bill. Without their direction, many of their movies would be forgettable.
I'm sorry, would you read that one more time? I got distracted by reading a different comment. That I'll read in a second. Go ahead.
Sure. Alex Barron, are there any directors you think consistently elevate mediocre scripts? For me, Hitchcock and De Palma fit the bill. Without their direction, many of their movies would be forgettable.
Man, let me have you feel that first, because you're much more of a cinephile than I am. Like you've probably seen a lot more like groupings of films by the same director. Like I have those few directors I really like, but
really?
like
I don't really go. I've rarely done like directors that like go binge directors' filmographies. Oh, and the only ones I've done that with are like auteurs that like write their own movies too. Like I've done it with Wes Anderson. I've done it with Guillermo del Toro, who I do think fits the bill, because he elevates the movies that he doesn't write. He elevates those movies to like Hellboy and the studio films he does. Like I think Pacific Rim is better than it had any right to be.
Yeah. That's a really great point.
Guillermo del Toro fits into this because he usually writes his own stuff, but when he doesn't and he does studio stuff, they're not for me really. Like I don't like Blade 2, but I think it's better than it would have been if he wasn't there. I'm not crazy about the first Hellboy, but I think it's better because of him. So I think when he does studio stuff, he elevates that stuff.
No, that's a terrific point, because a lot of the directors I'm thinking of right now are either workman directors that like sometimes elevate scripts, like Schumacher with Flatliners, but not always, obviously. You know, or are like writer directors.
Yeah, it's tough for me. I don't.
Or directors that
seem to mostly
pick good scripts in the first place. You know, like I want to say Robert Wise. I mean, Search for the Motion Picture is probably a better movie because Wise directed it. I don't know. That's another, I don't want to say workman director, but another director that like doesn't have a specific style that I talk about that all the time with him. But
it's interesting.
That can come in and make a lot of different kinds of things. No, you've half stumped me with that one because I don't feel knowledgeable enough. I mean, Hitchcock is a great example, and I'm having a hard time thinking of anybody better than that.
Yeah, you almost want to. You kind of wanted to. It seems like it would have to be someone who has a discernible style in their filmmaking to really notice this. Because I guess you could go with someone like Ron. I almost said Ron Wasserman, and I almost said Ron Perlman. Ron.
And I want to say Ron Moore, but that's even a different person. There you go. Yeah.
Consistently does good stuff, but he doesn't have a real discernible style, and I don't know like what the scripts were before him. Like I have no idea like how they would have turned out without him.
Yeah. Maybe. See, I want to say. I'm not thinking of his name all of a sudden. The guy who directed The Crow and Dark City, I love him, but most of his stuff is pretty good in the first place, and then he directed some things that weren't so good later on in his career. So,
yeah, that's a good one though. It's a good one, Alex Barron. That could be a whole show.
God, why can't I think of his name right now? I always have that, and right now I don't. Anyway, moving right along.
AMC Comics, are we getting any closer to your long-awaited playthrough of Spider-Man 2000 in celebration of Spider-Man 2 releasing and in protest of it only being on PS5? Thanks.
Thank you, Alex Proyas. God. Well, I was never planning on doing a playthrough just because I don't have a real great way to capture footage for that, because I'd have to play it on the Sega Dreamcast, and I don't really have a great way to put the footage into the computer for that. So I was just going to play it and talk about it, but thanks for reminding me. Yeah, now would be a good time because it'd be pretty funny to play that while everybody else is playing Spider-Man PS5.
It'd be great.
Which I'm not going to play until it comes to PC, probably.
I saw somebody do a really cool, poster that was the Spider-Man 2 poster with Spider-Man and Miles, but it was in the video game graphic style of, like, the Spider-Man games from the 2000s, because there's two of those games.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
That's fun. Yeah, I've been wanting to do those too. Hey, can you make sure before the show's out, we still got about 17 minutes, to get at least a couple of Patreon questions? And we've still got the rest of the month Patreon. We've got a few questions from them already. And if you'd like to ask a question that will guaranteed get answered on the show. That was not a great sentence, but I'll move on. Patreon.com/Geekvolution and the $2 tier gets you access to that. So you don't even have to be here to ask a question. But you can also show up live and hear it answered.
Yeah. Daniverse.
Oh, Austin says I could emulate that Spider-Man game. That's a good idea, except I've owned it on Dreamcast forever, and I want to play it on it with a Dreamcast controller.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm so listening to you.
So listening. Would you prefer if, this is from Daniverse, would you prefer if superhero movies just went back to small, less connected films again? Yes, I've been saying it since Phase 2.
Yes and no. I mean, for the most part, yeah. It's just a quality thing. If MCU, because MCU has this reputation early on for being so good at its interconnectivity, and I still don't think it's as good about that as it could have been. I still feel like they were flying by the seat of their pants too much, and that there were some things they hadn't figured out. I wish if they had to do the after credits things, they would, all count and not some of them get retconned later, and stuff like that. So that can still be done better than it has been. Even though, don't get me wrong, I want to go back to the drawing board first. I think we're going to see potentially a great example of this in microcosm with the universe of the Batman. I think here in a few years we'll look back on everything they're doing with that and we'll go, here's a universe. I don't know yet because we only got the one movie, but with Penguin and then with Batman 2 and with the Arkham show or whatever it is they're supposed to be making, I think there's a really good chance that we'll be like, see, here's how you do continuity and singular stories all at the same time. I hope that's what we say about that. But I think there's a good chance that will be an example of a great shared universe for comic book stuff.
Lion's Song.
Hi, I haven't heard that name in a while.
Lioness Song. Favorite warm drink, i.e. hot chocolate, coffee, hot tea, hot apple cider.
These days, French vanilla cappuccino. I have 2 of those a day. That gets me through the day.
See, I've never tried hot apple cider. I'd like to try that.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah.
That sounds...
I got some of that for Halloween last year, but didn't do it this year. $10 at the grocery store for a gallon of it. I don't know why apple cider got so expensive. It's very strange. What is that about? $10.
Yeah, here we get the real root of the whole stream. Cap ranting about the prices of hot apple cider.
Yeah, I don't mean to be a cheapskate, but I'm the only person in the house that likes it. So I didn't buy it because nobody else would drink it. And I would have to have a whole gallon. I don't need a whole gallon of it. $10.
This is the best rant ever. $10 for apple cider.
Yeah, that's the kind of stupid nerdy rant where you have to allow your voice to crack. $10 for apple cider.
You have to turn into a cartoon character to deliver that rant. We just got a super chat from Claudio Myron.
God, I'm so angry about the apple cider. Why did that have to come up? Anyway, is that a name we haven't had in a super chat before?
I hope so.
I feel like I recognize it, but I don't know if he's left a super chat before. Well, we're always looking for the excuse.
Yeah, we're always looking for a reason.
Oh,
we
have it. I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride.
Oh, we are a couple of mooks. Okay.
I can't remember the Monica dance. I've completely forgotten it.
Well, you'll have to study up a little bit for when we do our Friends stream.
That's true.
And by the way, we haven't talked about that yet, but God, how sad is it that we lost Matthew Perry? Jeez.
So young. He was way too young.
53.
Crazy.
And I haven't looked back into that. Did they ever finally release a cause of death?
I think it was just drowning. I think they called it cardiac arrest, and it was just like
he had a heart attack or a stroke
accident.
or something. Yeah,
he was just in a hot tub by himself. Don't hot tub by yourself, guys.
It seemed very likely that there wasn't any kind of foul play or that it was any kind of a suicide or anything. But it was anyway. That was a really sad deal, obviously, and that I watched an interview not too long ago with him from pretty recently, and he seemed a lot happier than he had been. So I'm glad that he at least seemed more or less fulfilled before he passed away. For all I understand about his life, anyway. And I think ultimately he'll have a pretty positive legacy.
Yeah, and I think he did a lot of good for like helping people understand their addiction and kind of getting rid of the stigma of that whole
That
thing.
was the main thing he was devoting his life to for the last few years, and I haven't read his book yet. I keep meaning to do that.
Yeah, that would be cool to read that.
But anyway, so DJ and I have been kicking around a friend stream. We were talking about probably doing that this month for closer to Thanksgiving, and we'll almost certainly do it now that he's passed. So
Yeah, I hope we can make that happen.
if we can make that happen, we will. Probably sometime in the next couple weeks. Maybe a Tuesday night if DJ is available.
Sure,
But we'll figure it
talk
out.
about it.
Yeah.
But anyway, Claudio's
Not to put you on the
super
spot,
chat-
but we were kicking that around. Not a big deal if we can't do it. I don't like that you have that power and I don't.
I didn't even do a thumbs up that time. I don't know what that was about.
Yeah, there is an AI that is not quite right going
Not
on
quite
there.
right. I think you're touched, AI. But
Okay,
yeah.
sorry, we gotta.
Claudio's super chat. His $5 in Canadian money is just sitting here. Cap, I never had a chance to check out Star Trek. If I do, with what do you recommend I start?
Wow, I love how formal that super chat was. With what?
With what?
And I'm not
With
saying.
what shall I fix it, dear Liza? Dear Liza.
With what shall I fix it, dear? With what? With a bucket. Anyway, so I'm not saying this to complain at all. It's shocking the number of times that I've gotten this question and how often it comes up. And I keep wanting,
Yeah, I've asked you this question like
I
a million
keep
years ago.
wanting to do like a scripted video. Like a much more formal, truncated, like 10-15 minute video. Although you guys know me, it'd be half an hour.
Yeah, you talked for half an hour about how you don't like video games anymore.
Giving different suggestions to different kinds of people, because there is so much Star Trek and it appeals to different people on so many different levels and with different interests that it's really hard to just go to that one episode, because some people don't care for 60s television and would need a more relatively recent show. And some people don't like episodic television, so then you're taking them to DS9. And some people want something a little bit more lighthearted and maybe a little bit more heightened and fun. And so then maybe you take them to Voyager. And so like I could come up with 5 or 10 episodes from every show. You notice I didn't even mention Enterprise. Enterprise is not a good place to start, no matter who you are, and none of New Trek is a good place to start at all, even if you end up liking it. I'll just say that nobody should ever start with New Trek. I don't even think you should start with Star Trek 09. But I would say, for most people, start with the best of both worlds in TNG. That's always the place I point to people. And then beyond that, depending on what your interests are, I could give you the like 2 episodes that would probably hook you into Star Trek at large or into a particular series. And then I would also say Wrath of Khan and Voyage Home are both pretty universal, and most people find those to be really easy gateways into Star Trek, or in like penetrable things that you'll like in spite of the fact that it's Star Trek, particularly Voyage Home. So even if you end up not liking Star Trek at large, those are great movies that are worth watching, but are not necessarily indicative of what the series is like. So anyway, yeah.
That's a cool idea for a video. I've seen a lot of videos. I've seen a lot of shorts like that where it's like, if you like this, watch these, and if you like this, watch these. That'd be cool to do like a longer form video where you can really get into it like that.
I will say, if you like more comedic stuff, but like this is also a really thought-provoking episode, I I never suggest this, but maybe I should. You could start with my absolute favorite TNG episode, which is a real easy thing to look at if you've never seen that show before, which is, I guess, starring Matt Frewer, who's one of my favorite comedic actors of all time, and because of that episode, actually, and it is called A Matter of Time, and it has the very best Picard speech in the entire series.
I don't know. I think Picard may have topped it.
No. I mean, if you like really sappy, ethereal stuff, sure. I never know what the hell he's talking about in that show.
Too cerebral. It's just too cerebral.
Oh yeah,
for
that's the problem. God, between that and the apple cider, I'm about to throw
This
something.
is just the part of the stream where I make Cap eject me.
Yeah, where is that end call button?
I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of hand sign I can do to make it happen. All right.
Yeah. If you do want to go back to the original series, my favorite episode is Mirror Mirror. Maybe kind of an odd episode to start with because you're looking at the evil doppelgangers of the main crew, but most people, know who the main characters in Star Trek are. And then another one I would recommend would be, Amok Time is a classic. A lot of people would say that. Or Squire of Gothos. Try Squire of Gothos. Anyway.
I like the sound of that. Tom put in a super chat a while back saying that I looked like Jim from The Office in my Halloween costume. Don't know why he said that. I guess just because I had a suit on and I had shaggy hair. But that was a super chat, so I gotta read it.
But he said it. Do we have any more super chats? We've got 5 minutes left of the show.
That is the end of the super chats.
Okay, last call for super chats. And why don't you go back to Patreon?
All right, let's go it.
Did you say let's goo it?
Let's goo it.
That's what I heard. It's not Nickelodeon.
No, that's slime.
Oh,
Goo
that's
slime.
slime.
Very different.
And
rookie mistake.
You know what? That's interesting too because Nickelodeon bought Ninja Turtles, but that's not slime. That's ooze.
It wasn't slime. It was ooze.
See, there's even a quote from the movie about that before Nickelodeon ever got their mitts on it.
Let's see.
Oh, played out. That's great. He's quoting Khan from Ethicon. Cap tasks me, and I shall have him. Anyway,
first Patreon question from SS Jerry. Danny Phantom got a sequel comic recently. Are you at all interested in that series, and what characters can you think of that are similar? I feel like he and other Ghost-type heroes are untapped potential and could be wildly popular.
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I watched a few episodes of that show, talking over it for a stream once,
Best way
and
to watch anything.
was impressed with it, but haven't really gone back to it. I think I showed Jason the pilot at one point, so not immediately itching to go read comics based on it. I haven't seen very much of that show, and then like other ghost-like characters or characters like that. I mean, there were a lot of things that show itself reminded me of. I was getting a lot of.
Yeah, it's like Ghostbusters versus Ghostbusters meets Spider-Man.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah. I was trying to remember the superhero angle. Yeah. It was Spider-Man before it was anything, wasn't it?
I've never seen any of
You guys have to forgive me because I watch a lot of stuff for the channel, and as DJ always likes to make fun of me for, it's like cramming for a test, and then it all goes out of your brain after that. I liked it well enough to maybe eventually go back to some of it, but I don't know other characters. Because you're talking about like ghost-like characters. I don't know who else I would put that up with, except like in his characterization, he was a lot like Spider-Man. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really hard to get into kids animated shows at our age that you didn't grow up with at all.
Yeah, it's
so hard. There's so much of that has kind of have to grow up with.
Yeah, except I will say some of it does depend on story sophistication, because we just reviewed a few episodes of Gravity Falls last night, and I want to watch more of that. That show was dynamite.
Yeah, but that's like an older kid. That's like a teenage show, right?
No, we talked about this last night. It's very multi-generational. It wants to appeal to 30-year-olds and 10-year-olds all at the same time, and like it does a really, really good job of that. You would love that show. That is a very up your alley kind of thing.
Interesting.
Because it goes to so many Scooby Doo places, and that's
okay.
not my thing, but it's too damn good not to watch it. Like,
Yeah, I've always heard great things about it. It's just that whole like kind of adult looking I know you're saying it's not an adult show, but that kind of animation style always turns me off. Like I can't get into like whatever Futurama or Simpsons or like any of those kind of simple animation designs, but
sure.
I'd like to check it out. I've heard great things about it.
Yeah, I said last night I think that show would get past most people's defenses. I'd be surprised to see very few people, or very many people, not finding something to like in them.
Cool. We got.
Yeah, let's do one more because we're right at 2 hours here.
All right, Patreon from Saqib Tariq. Thoughts on how much flexibility should be allowed when adapting characters and stories? This topic has come up again after Spider-Man 2 on PS5.
Yeah, so I'm gonna cop out and say it's always a case by case thing. Like,
it depends.
There's not a hard and fast rule on this for me, but the main thing that you gotta hang on to is the spirit of the initial character, because it's really easy to start with just the look of a character and then completely reinvent it. And there's that question of at what point does the DNA change so much that it doesn't even count as that character anymore? But I can't give you a hard and fast rule as to how far you're allowed to change it. So, like, I've not played PS5 Spider-Man yet, and I don't want any spoilers for that, but there were a lot of assumptions that they were probably making Harry Osborn into Venom in that, and that doesn't immediately change the spirit of either of those characters necessarily. You could potentially do that for that universe and might not cry foul because you've taken either of those characters too far in like the wrong direction. And so when you look at various iconic characters, there are those elements in their personality usually that they've almost always got to have, and not even necessarily backstory stuff. You know, like Batman, for instance, Batman Begins got away with having Bruce Wayne nearly become a murderer before he becomes Batman. That is a step in a very different direction, but it didn't ultimately feel like it changed the character too much or made him not Bruce Wayne. It gave him a whole new this whole new ripple, this whole new motivation for not wanting to use guns. So like you can do big departures like that, but he still didn't, he still didn't shoot guns. His parents were still murdered in front of him. All of that, and so the question is like, could you do a version of Batman whose parents weren't murdered in front of him? We've done versions where we're real ambiguous about it, but like, especially if you're doing a serious Batman, is that a thing you always have to have? Some of the trappings around it you can change. Sometimes he catches his killer, sometimes he doesn't. Et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes he has sidekicks, sometimes he doesn't. So I think it's even somewhat subjective as to what elements for each character all have to be there in order for it to count as that character. Like what makes Captain Kirk Captain Kirk? How far can you change him? Can you do a Captain Kirk that's not sort of a womanizer, or at least like sleeps with a lot of random women? Like, I don't know, maybe. That's not the thing that most appeals to me about that character, but it is one of the things that people think about when they think of Captain Kirk. It's also a thing that gets blown out of proportion a lot. You know what I mean? But like, I don't know, could you do a gay Captain Kirk and he still feels enough like Captain Kirk? That's a hard pill for me to swallow. I don't know about that, but I'd almost have to see it done. You know what I mean? He's got
such a sliding scale.
He's got to have the no-win scenario thing. He's absolutely got to believe that he's always going to make it out alive, no matter how big of a risk he takes. Like Captain Kirk's got to be a risk taker. Risk is our business. He's got to have that.
Yeah, you kind of just need to have the driving idea of what the character is. I mean, if you learn anything from Spider-Verse, it's like it kind of doesn't even need to be the the character I like, as long as it still feels like Spider-Man.
Well, and what helps with Spider-Man is it has the crux of that is a very specific moral lesson and thematic idea. And Batman sort of has that too. Like, you can't have a Batman that's not, like, really driven.
Yeah.
You know?
You don't want Bruce B. Wayne, who's just like schlubby, divorced Bruce Wayne.
Well, and try to make that endearing and not have him change by the end, because even he wasn't like that at the end of that movie.
Yeah. That's pretty good, though. Just lazy Wayne.
Oh, Thomas Lowe, I didn't even know that, if that's true. He says New Trek is trying to make Kirk gay for no reason. I've watched all but the last episode of Strange New Worlds, and I didn't get that with that, because, like, he fell in love with the... In a time travel thing, he fell in love with the Noonien Singh girl. So I don't know what you're talking about there. But I didn't say that to complain about New Trek, because if that's happening, I didn't know it.
He complains about New Trek without even trying.
Yeah. It's just an instinct at this point. Well, anyway. Everybody, thanks a lot for watching the Captain Logan Show, and we'll be back again next Thursday night for another one. No idea what we'll talk about next. Tomorrow night, Austin and I are going to come a little bit later than usual. I've got a writing meeting, and so tentatively 10 o'clock, but the writing meeting tends to go over a little bit, so we may be a little bit late, just so that everybody knows. And we're going to be doing a blind watch party for the supposedly terrible, but I've not seen it, live-action Netflix Death Note movie that has Defoe in it as Ryuk. And Austin's been wanting me to watch this for a year and has made me swear that I won't watch it before we see it. So I'm going to come in completely unprepared
and to see your reaction.
And blind for that, and I will react to it as we watch it all together.
It's going to be another Secret Investments.
Yeah, except not nearly as long.
Thank goodness.
Well, and then in a couple weeks we're going to do She-Hulk, so we'll have Secret Investment all over again.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, we don't need a thumbs up for that.
I didn't do it, Skype. Now I'm doing it. There we go. Go out with a bang.
Anyway, appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot for being here, and we'll see you again soon. DJ, thanks for doing the show as always, man.
Always a pleasure.
And DJ and I will try to do an extra show for you guys soon if we can make that work out. Anyway, I was Captain Logan, and this was DJ Martinez. We will see you later, folks. Bye, everybody.